Left out during the elementary school picnic. Left out during the middle school camp. Left out during the high school trip. Yu IlHan was always alone. But when the entire world disappeared, he was left behind. Ignored by humanity. Forgotten by angels. Abandoned by God. For 1,000 years, Yu IlHan stayed on Earth alone. No friends. No enemies. Just endless time and relentless training. While humanity leveled up in other worlds, he sharpened his skills in silence. Crafting. Hunting. Becoming something beyond human. And now, humanity has finally returned. The great cataclysm has begun. And the man who trained alone for a millennium is about to show the world what true preparation looks like. You want to hunt with me? To think a third-class monster is about to appear already. Just what has Earth come to already? Go ask God for that. At that time Erda, who didn't say a lot at the scene, started chattering 15 hours after Yu IlHan came back home. Had a shower, did maintenance on his equipment, had a sound sleep, and went to work in his workshop. No matter how much I think about it by myself, I can't come up with a conclusion. Even if you ask me, you won't come up with a conclusion. I said go ask God for that. Yu IlHan, who already made the 5th trap of destruction, retorted while checking that the inlaying process was done properly. Of course, they were all products that didn't have mana crafting done to them. How can you be so calm? This is about your world. Do you know how big of a problem it is for a third-class monster to appear when the soldiers on the front line of defense haven't even gotten their first classes yet? That was truly a huge problem. Currently humanity was acquiring strength rapidly by doing suitable quests in the other worlds thanks to God's help. But even so, the balance of strength is still tilted towards the monster's side. Just what else could be done for the humans for the balance to be righted? Erda couldn't make anything out of it. It's not that I'm calm. It's just that, even if I get nervous, I can't do anything. So I'm just doing what I can while eating popcorn. Yu IlHan asked while finishing the check and picking up a new piece of harcanium. How about other countries? According to the reports from other angels, there are none. The monster which showed signs of evolving into third class only appeared in Korea. Then isn't it due to the trap of destruction, as expected? At Yu IlHan's words, Erda became silent. It was because she also was predicting that this happened due to the activated trap of destruction in Korea. The trap of destruction directly strengthened the monsters? Of course, such a thing wasn't possible. However, it could have become the trigger for it. It wouldn't have been strange for the trap of destruction, which locked up countless monsters in the dungeon. It would have become a serious threat to those which didn't get locked up, and stimulate the berserking of the monsters. In other worlds, monsters were locked up in dungeons before they had the chance to become aware of it. Due to that, in truth, the monster's evolution should have happened inside the dungeons. Inside the dungeons, there may be cases where a new, dangerous species appearing due to crossbreeding, and although small in possibility, there may also be monsters which would earn a mutated record through fighting with other monsters and evolving. Dungeons are fucking pandemoniums. Yu IlHan shouted in shock. It was true. Just because you lock them up in dungeons, it doesn't mean that the monsters are lying down, waiting for the humans to appear. However, if you lock them up, they will evolve not by eating humans but other monsters. Just that monsters don't fight each other unless there's a special case. So their growth deteriorates if you lock them up in dungeons. So dungeons are necessary for humanity in many different ways. If you know, then it's good. Well, it also means that you, who is making those things, is amazing too. So, we've arrived at the conclusion that I need to make the traps of destruction faster. Erda had praised Yu IlHan, but he retorted blandly and put the harcanium inside the fireplace. The eternal flame, which was now used to processing harcanium, intelligently raised its temperature suitable for processing harcanium while enveloping it, and Yu IlHan, who earned the wanted results in just few seconds, started hammering the harcanium as if he had forgotten all his worries. Erda sighed while looking at Yu IlHan working when she shook her head when she was about to feel comfortable looking at his work. Yu IlHan working had the charm that would make one watch for 1 or 2 days absent-mindedly. Do you feel well if you just keep making something like you're doing now? No, well, it is enjoyable. He had found the trick of making the traps of destruction after a few times, so counting just the form creation, it took a fifth of the time compared to the first time he made it. Yu IlHan retorted while bringing out the artifact's form without a single mistake. The reason I'm making something is to experience new things through that. Whatever it is, if it ends after just making it, then it's meaningless. Just this trap of destruction is like that too, isn't it? Is that so? Erda reminded herself that Yu IlHan was weak to new information and stimulation. It wasn't that she didn't understand why, but when she thought about the background behind why his personality changed to be so, she felt pity. She was surprised at that fact, since she realized that just now, that she, a higher existence, had sympathized with Yu IlHan. However, Erda, who didn't really hate that feeling, spoke to him purely intending to make him feel better. Become stronger, Yu IlHan. If you become stronger, then you will be able to see and experience new things. Endlessly. Yeah, I'm also thinking of doing that. Yu IlHan absent-mindedly replied while continuing his work. Erda was dissatisfied with his absent-minded reply, but she would have been shocked if she knew just how firm of a will was dwelling in his words. When he made about 8 of those traps, the angels, who recovered all their mana, returned. When he mana crafted with the help of those angels, now, a vast, heavenly trap of destruction was completed. Yu IlHan's mana crafting leveling up to level 11 was a bonus. Options were attached without fail. Just what level is his blacksmithing at? Perhaps due to seeing how the trap of destruction was activated, his ability became better. We will install this by ourselves. I will request you with the rest too. Thanks to getting used to mana crafting, completing the trap of destruction had also ended in an instant like frying beans with lightning. E/N. This is my new favorite saying. When the angels, who came like the wind, left like the wind with the trap of destruction, Yu IlHan, who watched their backs, quietly muttered, I don't know which country it will be, but I hope a dangerous monster doesn't appear there. Unlike when making the trap of destruction, there was no need for all the angels to go for installing them. Yu IlHan didn't go, so Erda was also still on top of his head. And she felt uncomfortable after she heard that. Just because a third-class monster appears due to the stimulation from the trap of destruction doesn't mean that it's your fault. Currently, you're doing an important and great task of stabilizing the current Earth. So, I know. Thanks for minding about me. Erda lost her words, and Yu IlHan stretched his body after putting down his hammer. I'm tired. I'll sleep for a bit. I need to stay with you anyway, for the activation of mana. Yeah, whatever. Yu IlHan had another shower after he came back home. However, he washed his hair, and when he was about to wash his body with soap, he realized, I feel like my body has become bigger? You didn't realize that until just now? At Erda's words, he hurriedly looked at the mirror. When he became conscious of it, he could see it properly. He had grown overall. He became taller, his shoulders became wider, and his arms and legs had grown longer by a tiny bit. You will grow more if you level up more and keep advancing classes, so it will be bad if you get surprised now. Don't you think my face became a little more handsome too? Well, shouldn't it have changed using human standards? To a higher existence such as Erda, Yu IlHan's face wasn't a characteristic trait. The trait which moved her was not outside but inside. Of course, she didn't intend to say that out loud, so she ignored Yu IlHan's nude fashion show. Even while thinking that he was over-exaggerating things, Yu IlHan had a nice sleep throughout the night. The reason why he could keep his vitality is, of course, something to do with finding something to do endlessly, but it also had to do with him being able to enjoy sleep. His sleeping time, which wasn't too long, nor too short, gave him the strength to live a new day. Although, there were times where this new day had become 2 or 3 days due to being immersed in training or work. So, Yu IlHan was more proficient in sleeping than his spearmanship or his metalwork. If one had to pick the one who could sleep the most completely and efficiently, he might take first place in the universe. T/N, maybe multiverse, and perhaps due to that, on Yu IlHan's retina, after he woke up in the morning after a good sleep, a line came up quietly. You have awakened. Resting LV max efficiency of all acts of rest increases dramatically. If you have the skill evolution materials, you may evolve the skill to the next stage. Wow, what an alarm! Yu IlHan shouted while kicking the blanket. He didn't know that such a skill existed. When Erda, who was sleeping on top of his head, woke up and saw the situation, opened her mouth wide, dumbfounded. Resting skill? Just when did you learn a skill with a difficulty of acquiring rank of SSS? SSS rank? This thing is harder to learn than our *S**ing**N. E/N. This author is crack up. Just how did you learn it? Even I didn't learn it yet. Moreover, I heard that leveling it up was more difficult than acquiring it. Yu IlHan replied honestly. I researched how to sleep more comfortably at nights in those several centuries. There was a reason I couldn't acquire it. Beds are science. T/N. A popular advert in Korea. Beds aren't furniture. Beds are science. Refer to, I make them, 3 chapter. Shut up. This was the moment Yu IlHan counterattacked for the inventory magic. But what do you use this skill for? For sleeping and resting well, of course. If it's just that, there's no way you should be so shocked. Erda obediently spilled the beans when she heard what Yu IlHan pointed out sharply. Yu IlHan was well versed in this, perhaps due to reading so many books, and now had the ability to read the meaning behind actions. And in the first place, she also didn't have any intention on hiding it. Well, it did become the time for me to explain to you about skill evolution. Oh, as expected. Awakening, in other words, it was just that the Akashic records haven't realized. But the resting skill was already on Yu IlHan from the beginning. And a max level 1 at that. However, Yu IlHan had no memory of getting any effects from this skill. Moreover, he had only awakened it now even though he had slept every day. In other words, it means that the usability of this resting skill is very small. Also, if the ability's effects ended with just that, there was no way Erda would have become so fussed about it when she always talks about being a higher existence. Skill evolutions are an extension of skill acquiring, and it's a type of achievement, and it has a similar definition to advancing classes. The answer lay in the skill evolution that appeared when the said skill is trained to the limits. It could be said to be a guidance from the Akashic records to offer a new path of a higher order with the special records that the existence has piled up until now. I'm alright, so say it easily as you always did. The skill becomes so OP that it makes a plastic surgery ad of before and after laughable. Good, much better. The skills that had the conditions fulfilled for evolution that Yu IlHan had were close combat, spearmanship, concealment, and lastly, resting. Dismantling and blacksmithing were both max as well, but these two didn't have a next stage. In other words, it meant that Yu IlHan's techniques had already reached the peak. Let's forget concealment since you can't even use it as an active skill, and let's exclude close combat and spearmanship as well since the requirements for evolving them are too difficult for your current level. This is also the reason I didn't mention anything about skill evolution until now. So resting's a bit different, eh? Yu IlHan's point was correct. The skill evolution materials for resting skill that Erda knew was different to the evolution materials of other skills. Why don't you check? You already know how to use status windows, right? It's sufficient for you to think up that you want to know the materials for skill evolution for the resting skill. When he obediently did as Erda said, all the requirements for evolving the resting skill had appeared in front of his eyes. The hearts of monsters of sleeping second-class monsters 0 out of 500, Trolls blood 0 500 liters, good sleep 0/100 hours, third-class monsters magic stone 0 to 1. There was a quest that didn't seem possible even if all the 7.4 billion people of Earth were mobilized. Author's notes: the arc hasn't ended yet. This arc is slightly long. Happy face. Yu IlHan has the niche for rhyming. T/N. Lost in translation. In fact, I couldn't find them in the Ross. Blame my eyes. What's the main meal for those monsters if they don't eat other monsters? It will be mentioned in the future. But the answer is mana. Rasengan's acquiring difficulty is a rank. E/N. Pretty keen on seeing that acutely. Erda's role is to help Yu IlHan awaken and use mana. But this isn't something he can learn just because he's taught. Just by Erda, a higher existence, being next to him, his mana is stimulated and activated so that the speed of adapting to mana, which originally should have taken him several years, is speeding up rapidly. Erda sticking to him is just because of that on the surface. I tried to explain using the chapters, but it seemed like my explanations were lacking T to the power of T. The motif for the resting skill was taken from the trolls from Mabinogi. It was the first time I saw a monster plopping down on the ground to rest in a game. T/N. I don't play Mabinogi. You want to hunt with me? 5. You said it was different. Yu IlHan shouted, and raged at the unfair reality. However, also shouted with a justified face. It is different. Why don't you take a look at the skill evolution condition for spearmanship? He did as she said. Insta-kill a third-class monster with a piercing strike 0 for 500. Insta-kill a third-class monster with a slashing strike 0 for 500. Magic stones of third-class monsters 0 out of 200. Magic stone of fourth-class monster 0 out of 1. Oh my Zelnaga. As said, it was definitely different. And it was the difference between Mount Baekdu and Mount Everest. T/N. Mount Baekdu is about 2.2 kilometers high. That doesn't mean that it's easy to climb Mount Baekdu. I thought it will be easy for you. Had evaluated him correctly, but perhaps due to his force he emitted when he was making the traps of destruction was too big. She was now inclining towards over-evaluating him. No matter how high my status is and how high my martial art levels are, in the end, I'm just level 28 and I can't use mana. Oh yeah, you were like that, weren't you? Third class might be a little difficult for you. The wall of mana was absolute. According to whether one could use mana or not, the power one could produce differed like heaven and earth. The reason how Yu IlHan can produce an attack power that can overwhelm other people is due to the peak-level martial art that was trained to the peak and went over the piled-up status on his body. If he was lacking in any of the two, he would have been overtaken by another person. In reverse, if Yu IlHan acquired the ability to use mana in this situation, then the definition of levels and classes that the Akashic records which ruled the worlds may be shaken by him, much less the life forms. That day will arrive soon. It must arrive. Realized that she was inwardly looking forward to that moment and she stopped thinking. Even during that, Yu IlHan was tidying up his bed, washing his face, and changing his clothes while complaining. Just where do you want me to go kill trolls? Do they even appear on Earth? Monsters don't only refer to the existences evolved from the original animals on Earth. If mana activates, the monsters that didn't exist on Earth will start appearing. It's the same as ores that weren't on Earth appearing. Like a lobster cannot live on other environments than first-class waters. There are many life forms which cannot live unless the concentration of mana reaches a certain point in this universe. Did you major in the faculty of explanation or something? Yu IlHan cleared things up while complaining at Erda's perfect explanation. Even if he goes out in pajamas, no one would realize him due to the passive concealment. But he didn't want to admit that as he even put on the direwolf skull mask. Let's see. The reason he turned on the TV just before he went out was because of the thought that the TV may broadcast him the results of the trap of destruction that should have activated yesterday. Erda told him to not mind about it, but how could he? A master had to take responsibility for the item he makes. However, on TV, a scene out of his expectations was being broadcasted. Isn't that the scene where I fought 2 days ago? You mean the square you left the giant leopard's corpse? The view of the video was shaking as it was taken from a helicopter, but the scene the camera was showing was without a doubt the place a lot of people, including Yu IlHan, had fought the gigantic leopard. Some high-rise buildings had collapsed miserably, and in some places even the rubble matched, so this wasn't a recording. However, to think they divided that up in such a short period of time. That's interesting. He couldn't find any traces of the huge leopard's body, even after he rubbed his eyes. The mountains of leopard meat that Yu IlHan had left on the scene was also gone. With only traces of the battle, the corpse, and the large number of humans had cleanly disappeared. It may be a bit different to what you're thinking. At that moment, Erda spoke with a slightly stiff voice. When Yu IlHan was about to ask back while tilting his head, he could hear a voice from the screen. The place which had the second-class monster's corpse is, as you see, clean. It had disappeared along with the people who were fighting over the spoils of war after the battle. What? It didn't take long for Yu IlHan to realize that something was wrong. Some are saying that a dungeon had opened and swallowed them. The authorities are mentioning the possibility that a dungeon's entrance may have opened in the middle of the city, and are cautioning not to approach this area and... The broadcaster's words continued, but Yu IlHan couldn't focus on that. His eyes trembled. There's no way it's a dungeon. So you know well. Erta nodded her head. Her expression was frozen coldly like an ice field. The dungeons in Korea have already gone through their first activation. If new monsters appear due to the activation of mana, then there may be a possibility of new dungeons appearing at that time, but it definitely isn't now. That means... Immediately after Yu IlHan muttered, the camera screen which was showing the ruined city instantly colored black with a loud crash sound. Immediately after that, the screen changed to the news desk and showed the dumbfounded newscaster. The newscaster tried to hide the ripples and said, "It seems there is an accident at the scene," and was proceeding to cover it up. But Yu IlHan had already seen through the situation. There was another monster. So you saw it? Of course I did. The strategy seems familiar. Yu IlHan had acquired almost all martial arts and methods to move his body in 1,000 years. However, this was limited to human techniques. There was no way he would be able to realize the technique that monsters used. However, Yu IlHan had seen through it. What did this mean? The answer was already there. Concealment. It was a master of concealment. It was definitely a leopard. And it was a pitch-black one too. Erta, I didn't know either. The giant leopard was definitely dead. And you even procured its magic stone. 99.99% of monster hunting end at that point. What about the 0.01%? If it was pregnant with a child? I knew it. Yu IlHan facepalmed. He felt like he would collapse just from that, so he had to endure while clenching his teeth. The black-furred leopard that appeared for an instant on the screen was the child of the giant leopard that died 2 days ago. If you dismantled it properly, then this wouldn't have happened. In the end, this is a disaster that was called forth by human greed. I had to take a step back at that time. Although it's true that the black leopard was born as a result of you not dismantling it, but that doesn't make you responsible for that disaster. To Yu IlHan, who was muttering bitterly, Erta retorted with a bitter smile. You can't make a mistake about that. Please look back at the reason why you had no choice but to leave that corpse there. I have no regrets about my actions then. However, I can't take the deaths of countless people lightly. Among them, there were some who I rescued, and some who showed me goodwill, and some who intended to take it fairly. Yu IlHan's despair was bigger than she thought. Erta still hadn't understood him fully. Erta despaired for a bit when she realized that obvious fact just now. She thought that she wanted to console Yu IlHan. After that, she thought about why this situation occurred. Just why did a higher existence such as her couldn't see through the existence of that monster? If you want to talk about mistakes, then it's with me. I should have thought more deeply about the reason why the giant leopard had gone in a frenzy. So it was to hide its offspring? It's definitely to hide its child in its womb that it had gone in a frenzy when it was near death. Originally, it might have fooled humans, but it shouldn't have fooled me, but... Yu IlHan thought up of the black leopard's figure which appeared on the TV screen a moment ago. Concealment. This is the reason why you couldn't find it. Yes, it's an amazing condition. Even I don't act while thinking that a frenzied monster had a child and that child's special ability is concealment. Moreover, Yu IlHan, who had max-level dismantling and could dismantle even a huge animal's body in a short time, didn't completely dismantle it. Thanks to the human skirmish, the dismantling of the huge monster was postponed, and as a result, the black leopard was born safely and had. Thinking like that, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the birth of the black leopard was a miracle. I wish that it wasn't, though. Yu IlHan asked while looking at the panicked and sweaty expression of the newscaster inside the screen. Is it a third class? Considering its abnormal concealment ability, it probably is. At Erta's report, Yu IlHan heaved a sigh and turned the TV off. It was just a moment ago when he concluded that he couldn't win against a third-class monster, and now he felt frustrated. However, he couldn't leave it like that, as if he did. There was no knowing how many accidents it would cause. Moreover, although he might be taken over by the people who were doing quests in other worlds, Yu IlHan was still the strongest on Earth. If he pulled out saying he couldn't kill it, then just who would be able to confront it? Finally, although there was no one looking for him to be responsible for this, Yu IlHan himself couldn't stay still as he felt disturbed. To Yu IlHan, who always thought that he should clean up what he's done, that leopard was a mess that he had to clean up with his own hands. He thought up of the figures of the soldiers who were looking at him with admiration, and the figures of the people who cheered after they survived the ordeal. He subconsciously clenched his fists. I should prepare. Are you confident? It may be a bit difficult to deal with it alone, but if I make the necessary preparations, it isn't an opponent I should fear so much, is it? Unlike the Yu IlHan, who always thought up his path of survival first, he looked very spirited. Erda slightly wondered at that fact, but the reason for Yu IlHan's confidence was extremely simple. It was because the ability of the leopard, which is expected to be third class, was concealment. If it was a case where its stats were all put into strength or defense, then he wouldn't know, but if its special ability was concealment, then there was no reason to fear. Since Yu IlHan, who had mastered concealment without even training for it. Immediately after Yu IlHan showed his confidence, he asked Erda with a careful voice, "It's not awesomely strong in strength and defense even after all that, right? Your predictions are correct to a point, so don't worry. It's impossible for an existence to show exceptional ability in all areas. That's especially the case with monsters. In that leopard's case, to gain its high concealment ability, its other stats would have decreased. So it's like that, eh?" Yu IlHan thought and left the house. Just by his feelings, he wanted to kill it after leveling up massive amounts, but he couldn't let it free in the middle of the city. If it was a dungeon instead, then he might have left it alone, but as it was a living and a third-class monster specializing in concealment at that, he couldn't do that. Kill that monster after making equipments optimized for killing it in as little time as possible and kill it. This was the best method. If that didn't work, then he would just run. Also, there was another method to decrease casualties while killing it. A man shouldn't speak two things with his mouth though, but there was no helping it. There were a lot of things in this world more important than a man's pride. Yu IlHan licked his lips even while unhesitatingly heading towards a public phone booth he had marked beforehand. Then he checked the ID card that he received 2 days ago and entered the Empress, Kong Myri's, phone number, clumsily with his fingers. This was the beginning of the strategy to save the front line with the dropout and the Empress. Author's notes: Oh my Xel'Naga. In the StarCraft world, Protoss's treat their creators, Xel'Naga, as their god. And this line became famous from that. Oh my god, it's the same nun-ace as that. Of course, Yu IlHan isn't a Protoss. The most awkward thing in the scenario progress is the fact that Erda didn't notice the existence of the Black Leopard. A mere third class had deceived a higher existence with concealment. I will be thankful if you just think that it's a result from the Mother Leopard's frenzy. You should know from the flow of my story. But in this story, human effort or parental love can easily surpass the limits. There were many readers who predicted that the child of the leopard would appear. However, it's not a pet. It clearly knows the enemy of its mother. T/N. Don't blame my translation for those who thought it was a zombie. It doesn't mean that he will get into a permanent party just because of the shared plan with the Empress. Whether you want a party with her or not, please watch.